Alright guys, here's the third and what will probably be the final aftermath of the Monte. So let's see how she did. It's gonna be junk after this, and we'll go over everything. Saturday I ran a heat and feature event in New Hamburg. Great place to run if you're not local to the area, or even if you are and you've never been there. Great place to go and run. They have a giant covered grandstand. It brings in a massive crowd. The grandstands are packed. The Ag Society pays you $50. If you show up on time, they pay you $50 to run at their show. Heat and feature event, they pay you to advance to the feature. They pay the top two cars. They move the top three on. So it's kind of a cool concept that they do, and it always draws a really great compact. They run just a compact night. They had youth compact and then the stock compact heat and feature, and it draws a real crowd of drivers, and it's quite a rush doing the repairs in between. So let's touch on what we did to get this thing ready for the track. They're quick. I didn't do any repair videos or anything. The biggest problem was that this car wasn't running right. What that actually ended up being is at the back of the motor, you have your map sensor, and there's a vacuum line that plugs into the back of it, and it comes up and then goes into your top of your fuel rail. Somehow I either misplaced it, or just somehow that went missing. Completely forgot about it. So as soon as the car came up to temperature, it didn't. It tried to get a map sensor reading, and it had no clue what was going on. And that's what happened in Mitchell. But that probably saved this car from taking a lot of damage in Mitchell. But I still wish I would have had full power to play with. But that was that. The next biggest thing on it, biggest hurdle, was the rear suspension. I was actually able to drop, after round two, I was able to drop this, take 4 bolts out and drop this entire rear subframe out, which is pretty satisfying on a pre-ran car. You typically can't get away with that, but everything was nice and straight back here. I had 4 replacement arms I had here. I had to grab a couple of the trailing arms that go up to the front. I had to grab a couple of those from Neil over at Whitelaw Automotive. We slapped them in, got the back straightened out, tracking straight again. And that was pretty much it. Front bumper was starting to knuckle down before we left on Saturday. We jacked that up by the bumper, kind of beat down on the frame rail. I was able to bring that to what was level. I would have liked to go a little more than level to get it going the other direction, but all I could get was level out of it. So how did it go on Saturday? If you haven't checked out the in-cars, give them a watch. The nighttime, it was night by the time we got out there. I realized those videos aren't as popular, but the GoPro does a great job of capturing it, so check those out. Went out for the heat. There was a heat of 6 of us. Like I said, top 3 move on, top 2 get paid. Was able to get down the top 3. They asked if I wanted to opt for third. I said, absolutely not. I'm here to battle it out to the end. And somebody else decided that they didn't want to do that. So I was able to take the heat win and move on. We brought it back into the pits, and there was some fixing to do. So again, that front bumper knuckled down on me again. We were able to get a jack under it, beat on the top of the frame rail again, and got it close to level. It wasn't perfect, but it was all we could do with it. Everything else was pretty good. In the back end, I had the rear frame rail. You saw that in the second aftermath video where the frame rail was actually still sticking out and the sheet metal had ripped away. Well, we tried to bend that frame rail before heading out on Saturday, and because that's where your fuel filler neck goes down, it's actually a double thick section of metal there, and I didn't do my notch thick enough, and we weren't able to get it to bend. It was starting to bend forward of that, and not what I wanted, so I left it, and we went out there, and what had actually happened, it was already starting to happen at round 2, but right down in there, the frame rail goes in front of the rear axle. It was starting to kink there already. And when I went out for the heat, I don't even know when it was, but I must have taken a good shot, and it shoved that forward and shoved the tracking of this axle. You can see it right here. This car is sitting straight on the trailer, so it shoved the tracking of the rear axle way forward. And so I could steer wicked sharp to the left, which was fine. Not in New Hamburg. Actually, if you've never been there, it's a really big, wide open track. It's very fast, and it's very much a drive forward. It's a drive fast and turn left type of track. Like, you don't want to get caught sitting still in the center, or you don't want to get caught, trying to back up if you don't want to back up. In a car like this W body with a rear end like this, you don't want to be backing up. You want to, if it takes the odd shot, it takes the odd shot, but you don't want to take big shots to it because it's going to explode. It's not going to do well. So between heats, we were able to, with that chunk frame rail that was still on there, we were able to get a chain wrapped around it, chain to the front cradle, and we actually had 2 trucks. Ripped this thing back straight, and the last, what they couldn't get out of it, the last little bit, I was able to get out of adjustment out of the trailing arms, the slotted trailing arms. So this thing was tracking straight again. It was cooled down. It was ready to rock. So I went out for feature, and I just ran out of car. This motor was running phenomenal. Like, this motor was running great. I actually, up here, this is a new one for me. So these are my homemade headers. So that's a chunk of 3-inch tube. This is my inline filler neck. That's a giant dent, if I can get it. And that's a giant crack in the filler neck. So apparently I sent the filler neck through the header, and it exploded. So for a while I had no idea where I was going. I couldn't see anything. The camera went cloudy. My whole vision went cloudy. I couldn't see anything out there. Once that cleared out, car was still running mint. Like, this thing was running exactly like it should. That's why I was so disappointed in Mitchell when both cars were not running so great, because they when they perform, they usually perform flawless. Your motor's not going to take you out. Something else is. So as I said, I just ran out of car. The front went all bad on me. This rail went way down. I couldn't get it to come back up. That bumper wanted to go down, and that's the way it was going to go. The cradle came up some on the side. Not awful, but it did come up. The bumper's all twisted up. This side is where it gets really bad. That's knuckled down some. So here we go. Passenger side motor mount. We can't do anything to our motor mounts. That's where try to get some light in here. That's where it should be sitting. That's where it is. So it jumped out of place. As I said, there's my repair, but right behind it, kinked. Basically on a 45, hard kink there where the frame narrows out. Nasty kink in the subframe. Surprisingly enough, I don't know how, this axle is actually still in. That's not actually the axle I gave out. As far as parts though, it's actually a pretty good demolition on parts. Wheels are still, both struts are still straight and everything. None of that new rear suspension's wrecked. Now I could feel this in the feature, but halfway through the feature, the car started shaking pretty violently. And I knew exactly what was going on because during the repairs to get it back out there, I could see the marks. See if I can get in here. Yeah. Right there, that's what's going on. So the axle cup was actually sitting on top of the subframe and just shaking like crazy. And eventually things bent so much, you can see the angle that axle shaft's on. Eventually it just pulled that out. And right around that same time, it decided it was going to pull out the steering shaft, and that was it. I couldn't go anywhere. I managed to make it down to 5th place, a little over halfway through the pack. So, I mean, I was happy with that. You always want to go further through, but truthfully, I just ran out of car. It just, I was trying to drive as sensibly as possible, but that's all it had in it. Rules are everything. There's stuff like that motor mount over there. There's nothing you can do about it. I used my 2 repair plates. After that, there's nothing you can do. You can't make this any stronger, right? Like once you've repaired it, you're basically rolling with how it wants to go in a way. In the feature, again, this axle decided to walk. It wasn't a big deal. It did decide to bend, like I had said, in a way that makes you able to turn left really fast. So it wasn't too big of a bother. I didn't even really notice it. Here's what's going on in here. It's got that floor shoved pretty far forward. Surprisingly didn't bend that trailing arm, but it's because the frame was actually shoving in and not the trailing arm. Maybe I can go in, but you know, there was probably actually a lot of life left in the trunk of this car. I didn't, I typically don't use them because I'm scared of dovey body trunks. They're not, in my opinion, they're not any good. They're only there as a target to get hit if they need to take a hit, but I don't even like taking hits in them. But did surprisingly well. Managed to save a tire on this side. Lost a couple tires actually. We had to change. We changed this side between heats and lost it again. But both the skidders are fine up front. Both front struts. I think the rear struts are actually still good. Like it was pretty easy on parts. So you've always got that. There was a cleanup heat on Sunday. Same thing, you would have got paid $50 again to bring your car back out for the cleanup heat. So we brought this thing back, shoved it in the shop. I mean, shoved it in the shop. I have a hinged staircase. We hinged the staircase up and got it shoehorned in here on the trailer and got looking at it. And ultimately we decided it wasn't the amount of work it would take to get it back on the track. It was the fact that with what you can do to repair the damage, it would have just went right back to the state again. We could have got this frame pulled out. We could have got that subframe maybe pulled down on the trailer and able to pull forward with a come along and stuck an axle back in and maybe got the steering shaft to hold by the skin of its teeth. Maybe, you know, probably would have went out there and made 2 hits and this nose would have been looking exactly like this. The steering shaft would have been pulled out, axle pulled out. All it would be is just a big waste of time. You know, maybe somebody comes in and lays over your strut and now you're just out of strut. You got $50, but you're out of strut and the fuel to get there. So just decided to leave it on the trailer. I think it's time. Come in here, yank this motor, yank all the suspension, get this thing ready to haul. So fortunately, I shouldn't even say unfortunate. I'm actually very happy with that. 2 runs on one of these cars is usually a big deal for me. I'm pretty hard on them. I think that second run being a little soft is what extended its life, but I'm getting better with the sensible driving. I feel like I wasn't too hard on it during the heat or the feature really, but that's just every car only has so many hits in it. Remember that. And just used it all up. So like I said at the start of the build, I'll see this all the way through. I did the aftermaths, I did the heats, and told you about any repairs that were done. I think if there's anything worth capturing when I strip this thing apart, maybe a time lapse to gut it all and get it ready for scrap, and maybe even seeing it get craned off and thrown in the pile, I think would be a good way to end the build series. And we'll see if I do any more. I don't know. This whole talking to a camera thing, I don't know if it's for me, but I sure like having them in the cars, and I like putting them in other people's cars. Guys are actually pretty excited when you ask it, can I put a camera in your car? And then they had a good night and they got to see the footage after, and you get a message from them saying, you know, thanks for throwing that camera in there. That was awesome. That was such a great run. And then they have that to remember, right? So I enjoy that part of it. These shop videos, I just haven't decided if they're for me yet. Maybe do the aftermaths, but even these, I really stumble my way through. So anyway, I think that's enough rambling on for this one. And we'll get tearing into this thing and get some parts back. We need a few of these parts back to get into the Pro car, and that's what's going to be coming up next. We'll probably end the year off running this pro car, hopefully. It was kind of nice to actually stage the builds out that I ran basically one car at a time, so I didn't have multiple cars going and, you know, flip-flopping parts back and forth. I did that last year and I really didn't like it. I was stealing a harness off this, injectors out of this, and a fuel tank out of this, and it was a bit of a mess. So I'm a lot happier to just run one car at a time, run it till it's junk, strip it, get it into the next car. It's a lot less stressful. It doesn't always work that way. It all depends on where you want to run. I have my heart set on running a few fairs, and luckily they were the stock compact, and this thing survived the whole way through. If it didn't survive Mitchell, I wouldn't have been building. Maybe I might have built a car last week to take to New Hamburg, but it would have been a lot more stressful than just doing the minor repairs to this one and heading back out on track. I'm getting a little wore down. It's a lot. By the time you get home and you take care of your family, and then you use what time is left to come out here and work on these things all night and even later than you should be, it gets to be a lot. It starts to get tiring. So I'll be happy to throw a few parts in this and just hopefully go out and minimal damage and just keep running this till the end of the year, and then this winter just decide what's for next season. I'm sure one of these winters I'll just say, you know what, next season, I don't think there's going to be a season, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm still having a good time. I think we're just getting started with all this. So. Alrighty, guys. We'll see you in the next one.